Hello everyone, my name is Ashitish Rajapandula. I am from Aditya Engineering College, pursuing my BTech third year in Computer Science and Engineering in specialization in Data Science. Now I am going to demonstrate a stateless JWT authentication service that is designed using Express Node and uses RSA encryption for the security purpose. I have made a API calls for registering, logging, and refreshing the token to increase the expiry time of the user to avoid multiple times authentication and to prevent to make sure the token rotation is done and also logout functionality. Coming to the file structure, I have used main entry point as server.js that uses express and rate limiting also that allows only 5 5 API failed calls per minute, and also the database connection code and for a health checking the health, and my app is running in 8080 port, and this is the enrollment variables that are required for my app to run, that is database URL, JWT private key and public key path, and test file for running my test that uses all the 5 API calls in a single script, and my code for generating two private and public keys, and the Docker file, and my Docker compose file is consist of two services, app and database service, that is server and database service. And coming to my routes file, I have routed all the 6 API endpoints in my routes folder and used middleware for authentication for checking the token is authenticated or not, and I used mitigation folder to store the database tables commands to build automatically when the docker command is run, and I use our controller for my API calls logic. I have used all 6 API calls in single file, and I made every logic to be run and exported from this file only. Now let us run Docker. Here the Docker build is completed by creating two public and private keys, and it is stored here. And initially my database connection was failed here, and I also given a logic to retry connection. It will retry until the database is connected to it, and I got a successful message that database is connected to Postgres. Next, let's make the API calls. Let us use Postman API to perform API calls. First API call is register, and the body of the register should be username, let's say li5, and email @gmail.com, then password, that is asdf@123. Now let us send a API request. The API request is successful and a status code of 201 is generated. And we can see their user is created. A new user is created with li5, and the password is hashed here. And another API call is login API call, that is a post method, and we remove the email from the payload and send a request, and we got a status code of 200 that indicates the API call is successful, and we got a body of response body, token, barrier, access token, expiry time, and refresh token. Okay, now let us perform refresh API call. That uses refresh token to reduce the number of authentications that are done by the user. The user frequently does not need to require authenticate. By using refresh endpoint, we can increase the expiry time and make sure the user does not make many authentications. Yeah, it is successful, and we can get a access token. Let's copy this, and 3 API calls are done. And now let's try profile. Let extract profile from the. Now we should give a header to it because it uses middleware authentication. The middleware will check whether the authentication token is accurate or not, authenticated or not. And let's paste the authentication code here, the access code here, and let's try to send an API call. And see, we can see that the response body is generated with the profile, user profile. Now 4 API calls are done. Let's try another API call, verify token. It is also a get method. We can see that a status code of 200 is generated with response body, says that it is a valid one. Next API call is logout, that is a post method, and that needs a refresh token. And now when we send logout API code, it generates a 204 status code that indicates no response body is generated. You can see that here. And now let's check the test.flow.sh file from the Docker itself. Yeah, we can see that all the 6 API calls are done from this script file. Register, user registration, logging, and profile is generated, and token refreshing the token is generated, done here, and profile with new token is generated here, and logout also is generated here. From the script file we can load the 6 API functions, and I have used a rate limiting for the login, as in the 60 seconds only 5 API calls has to be made for the login. Otherwise it would generate a 429 status code that represents multiple duplicate API calls are done. If the API call is successful, then you can get a error message. Let's try it. Sorry, if the API call is successful, we may get it may be skipped, and it will be not counted as a failed one. Now let's try with the failed API calls. Okay, let's try from this. As this is an invalid payload that is used for the login and generated multiple times. And see, we got error 429, too many atoms. So this is the rate limiting. And thank you.